They say that good things come in small packages, and yeah, that's a bit of a tired old cliche, but in the case of the Toyota GR Yaris, it is absolutely true. You have to wonder how many more traditional hot hatches we're going to get with the world's car fleet turning electric, but this is definitely one you want to check out. For the uninitiated, the GR Yaris is the street-legal version of the World Rally Championship car, so it sits lower to the ground, it's longer and wider than a regular Yaris. It also has an insane engine inside it which makes it go very fast, but we'll come to that in a minute. What's more is the GR Yaris is the only sports car that Toyota currently offer that is all their own, with the GR86 being a joint venture with Subaru and the Supra developed with BMW. So the Yaris is 100% Toyota. The GR Yaris scores a much more aggressive look than the regular car. Yes, we've got regular Yaris headlights up the top here, but the front grille has been widened and squared off, allowing this car to take in a lot more air, which this engine needs. We also get fog lights down the bottom here next to some fake vents. I think this car looks really good in white, but I have noticed just a little bit of a familiarity with the design just here, or is it just me? Side on and you can see how much the GR Yaris is different to the regular Yaris, and that's because the chassis of this car is actually a little bit of a Frankenstein. At the front it's Yaris, at the back it's actually a Corolla. And that gives this car these really wide haunches and a wider track at the back. Also, the roof is carbon fibre and the doors are aluminium, as are the bonnet and rear tailgate, all in order to save weight. The design at the rear here is reminiscent of the Toyota CHR. We've got a shiny piano black diffuser down the bottom here with two big exhausts that make a pretty good noise. Underneath the tailgate, we've got a pretty small storage space. It's only 141 litres. You can increase it, of course, with the rear folding 60/40 split seats. Under the floor, well, there's no spare tyre. There is a tyre repair kit, and the battery is actually under there because there's no room at the front. Under the bonnet is where things get really interesting for the GR Yaris with what Toyota says is the world's most powerful mass-produced three-cylinder engine. It's a 1.6 litre turbo that outputs 200 kilowatts of power and 370 Newton meters of torque with a 0 to 100 time of 5.2 seconds. Now, this is quite a small car, so those numbers are actually pretty huge. Power is driven to all four wheels via a 6-speed manual transmission. There is no automatic option. If you want this car, you're learning to drive stick. Which is fine actually, because the manual transmission in this car is really easy to use with short throws, a nice notchy feel, and the clutch is nice and light as well. The rest of the interior is very well put together as you'd expect from Toyota, and there is a bit more soft touch material in here than you'd find in some of this car's Korean rivals, and the hard plastic that there is actually really high quality. The center console screen is the one thing I am disappointed with in this car. It's 7 inches and it just really feels like it's an entire generation behind everybody else. I mean, Hyundai, Kia and Mazda all do a far better job of center console screens than Toyota do, which is actually quite surprising. It's laggy, the resolution on the maps is pretty low, as is the vision from the reversing camera. There is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but they're not wireless. Under that, we've got a couple of air vents, and then there's a shelf to store your phone on, which you would think would be where the wireless phone charging would be, but unfortunately we don't get that in this car. The climate controls underneath that look like a 1990s car stereo, but they're well labelled and pretty easy to use. Underneath that, we've got the drive mode selector. Now, there are 3 drive modes in this car: normal, sport and track, and what they do is change the way torque is delivered to the wheels. So in normal mode, the rear wheels get 40% of the torque, in sport they get 70%, and in track it's 50-50 between the front and the rear. Handbrake here, which comes up really smoothly. There's no ratchety noise with it, and that actually takes a little bit of getting used to. There's another button here marked IMT, and that actually allows this car to rev match, allowing for smoother down changes, and it's actually a pretty good function to be able to turn on and off. We've got two small cup holders here and another small little storage space. I'm really missing not having an armrest, but you do kind of get used to it not being there, I guess. Head-up display on the windshield is actually really good. It has your odometer, your speed and lane guidance assist on there. Plus it also tells you when to change gear. And the instrument cluster has two big analog dials on it, and that's kind of what you want from a car like this. It feels really authentic, but to be honest, I don't look at the speed on there. I look at it on the head-up display. A nice little screen in between there, which has a number of different functions and displays you can show, including you can watch the turbo do its work, as well as see how their torque is being delivered to all four wheels. The steering wheel has a really nice feel to it with stitching. It's a very solid construction. It's a good Toyota steering wheel, the big GR badge on it here. The seats are wonderful. They are Alcantara buckets with some leather accents on them, and they're actually extremely comfortable. The seating position feels a little bit high in the cabin. My head's not touching the ceiling, which is fine, but I really can't see to the front edge of the bonnet at all. It's a little bit like sitting in a Toyota Tarago. The front just kind of drops away. Visibility out the front is also a little bit obscured by the rear vision mirror here. It's sort of right in the middle of where you need to look a lot of the time, and that's not too great. I don't know what that would be like on the track, but around town it can get a little bit tricky when you're coming up to a pedestrian crossing. This just has so much go. Like, it's just insane. You really do get that go-kart feeling from this car. The suspension, as you'd expect, is on the firmer side, but it's not as firm as some of the other hot hatches I've driven. I mean, the Renault Megane was really backbreakingly awful to drive in its most firm mode. This doesn't have adaptive dampers, so the suspension is what it is all the time. And it is firm, but it's not too bad. This is far from the most quiet and refined cabin you're going to come across. There is a lot of noise, and most of it just coming from the road. I mean, this car does ride on fairly thin rubber, and the firm suspension doesn't really help the situation either. So there have been times when I've really had to crank the volume of the JBL sound system, which in itself is actually not that great, and it struggles to drown out the noise. Plus, you're also contending with a bit of fake engine noise, which is unnecessary. It doesn't really need to be there. I mean, it's not terribly obtrusive. You don't really hear it until you hit those really high revs, but I don't know. It doesn't need to be there. You can't help but smile. This is what real driving is. 0 to 100 in the Toyota GR Yaris is officially 5.2 seconds. I'm not that great a manual driver, but I do have it switched to track mode, allowing for even distribution of torque between the front and rear axles. So let's give it a go and see how it feels. Pretty awesome. When you get an open stretch of freeway, this really does have a real go-kart feel to it. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, everyone says that about a Mini and every other small hot hatch on the road, but this feels more like it than any of them, I think. Even though the GR Yaris is based on a pretty cheap light car, it does not miss out on any safety gear. In fact, it's pretty well stocked, as you can see from the list. But there is one important omission, and that is parking sensors. There are no parking sensors on this car for either the front or rear. And there's only one camera on this car, and it's the reversing camera at the back. There is just a little bit of a knocking kind of noise. I'm not sure if that's normal, but just every now and then, as the car is changing gears, it just sounds like it's coming from the back somewhere. That. Don't know if you heard it or not, but it's there. Driving on my favourite little piece of twisty road near my place. This is so much fun. Oh yes, this is good. It feels really flat, really well planted to the road, and just so much go. The steering wheel feels great. Love the rev matching on the down changes there. It's nice and smooth. So responsive. The steering is nice and direct. It's a good size wheel. And the short throws on the Millennial anti-theft device, aka manual transmission, feel really good too. It's cars like this that are going to survive the world's move to electrification, because I think there'll always be a market for hot hatches that run on internal combustion engines, even if it's just something that you do on the weekend and have a bit of fun on the track. So if you really want to experience some real driving, get yourself into a Toyota GR Yaris.